Hey guys, I'm back with another video. I know you guys seem to like the all about videos that I do, explaining characters, so I thought I'd do something similar in the same vein, with all my D&D characters. So it's a little different since it's going to be 4 characters in one video versus 1 or 2 characters, but you get the idea. So they are all D&D characters from different campaigns. They're from 4 different campaigns, 2 different DMs for these campaigns. So things can be a little different. Everyone's D&D worlds are different depending on who your DM is and whether they, go really homebrew or stay very core rules, stuff like that. So yeah, there are some liberties taken with some of these things. There's some homebrew, there's some stuff that's sort of like made up, between me and my DM. So yeah, it's not going to be the same for everybody. So what I have isn't necessarily like core rules as written D&D, but this is just kind of what I do and what works for me and the DMs I have, but it doesn't really matter because I'm just explaining these characters, so enjoy. So first up we have Morrow, and he was my first ever D&D character. So his full name is Morrow Sadiq. He is a half-elf with a Freedy bloodline, so basically his great-grandpa was an Afridi, which is like a type of like genie sort of thing, which is why he has little horns. But his dad was a human with the bloodline, and his mother was a sun elf. He is 28 years old. His alignment is chaotic neutral. He's gay. His class is a homebrew class called Dancer, so it's a kind of a combination of a few classes. So he primarily does magic. So his archetype in the Dancer class is called the Enchanter. So he can flip around and do kicks and stuff like that, but also he can do magic. But something that I talk with my DM about that I've implemented for him is the fact that he can only do fire magic. So he's limited to only fire magic. He has full range of doing fire magic from any like spell casting thing, so like wizard, sorcerer, bard, whatever. He can do any fire spell from any of those classes, but only fire. So a brief backstory for him: he was raised by his human dad in this town called Hillsfar. Hillsfar is known for being not very nice. It's primarily, completely composed of humans, so him being half-elf, not great. His dad was, like, super protective of him when he was a kid because he's not human. So his dad kind of, like, hid his identity of who he was, and his dad also had to be a little disguising of himself because he also has horns, so could look kind of unhuman at times. So it was just him and his dad living in this town until Morrow was about 6 going on 7, and he started to develop magic. Once this happened, his dad kind of took a turn for the worse. You see, his dad is in a cult. Yep. His dad's in a cult, and what we found out now in the campaign is that this cult is trying to, like, basically bring over elementals from the other planes, but they need sacrifices that go with those elements. So little Morrow, being blessed with this fire magic, would make a perfect sacrifice to the fire elemental thing. So his dad kind of, like, takes him to this, like, altar, all these cultists around, whatever. So from what we know thus far in the campaign, they thought that maybe they could just, sacrifice a little bit. So he gets his arm like, torn off, cut off, whatever. The arm that was, like, showing the magical abilities. So he gets his arm cut off, and he basically just starts, like, leaking fire everywhere, ends up killing most people in the room. His dad is fine. There was this girl there that was fine, but everyone else dead. The girl helps him escape, and she basically throws him down a trash chute, but then she gets, taken. So he is able to escape, and he lives on the streets for a while. Lives on the streets just sort of fending for himself, and eventually he comes across this band of, like, nomadic entertainers, and he sees them dancing and doing a little performance, and he thinks, wow, that's so cool. So he tries to copy the dance moves that this, like, teenage girl is doing. She notices him eventually and goes over to talk to him, finds out everything, finds out his whole life story, and the group kind of, like, takes him in. He learns how to dance, all that sort of stuff. But eventually, after a couple years, being as they are nomadic, they kind of want to, like, leave the area and, like, go on, like, way, way, way further. And he's just kind of too afraid to go do that. So they part ways, and he's probably around 13 at this time. They part ways, and he goes and finds work elsewhere. So he ends up at a brothel doing just, like, housework, chores, serving drinks, stuff like that. And eventually, after some time, he does start doing work there, but secretly, he's not supposed to be doing it. So, amongst the patrons, at some point, there were some dwarven patrons. They had artificial limbs, prosthetics, and he was very curious about it. So he asked them about it, and they told him, like, about this dwarven place where they make a lot of stuff like that. So he saves money, and he eventually leaves the brothel and goes to live amongst these dwarves. He's about 20 or so when he goes and does this. So he lives with them for a while, and eventually he does get a prosthetic made, and once he gets a prosthetic made and is able to wear it, he finds out that his magic has, like, come back. Because his magic was, like, solely based through his left arm, and when his arm got cut off, he didn't have any way to do his magic anymore. So his prosthetic kind of works as, like, his spellcasting focus. Without it, he cannot do his magic. So he gets prosthetic, he has magic again. So yeah, it takes him a while to learn how to use it, but eventually he does, and it's great. So after that, he just sort of wanders around. He doesn't really have any goals or ambitions. He's a half-elf. He's gonna live for a really long time. So he just kind of wanders and, does his work, wink wink, and that leads him to the start of the adventure, which of course starts in a tavern, like all good adventures do. I guess a couple fun facts about him. He is afraid of dogs, and he's afraid of commitment. He's generally a pretty cowardly person. He's scared of a lot of stuff. He really is scared of, like, religious type things, mostly because of his childhood trauma and PTSD. He's not very smart. He reads at, like, the level of, like, a 7-year-old, because that's as old as he was when he stopped getting education. He was homeschooled, but yeah, after that he ran away and lived on the streets, so he doesn't know how to read very well. He is a very ugly sleeper. He snores a lot, and, like, will sleep with his mouth open and drool, so, very attractive. And as you guys might have seen from the Moto animation that I did, he is a bit of a monster lover of sorts, so there's that. But yeah, I think that's about it for him, so we'll go move on to the next one. So next in line we have Sonata. His full name is Sonata Chaikov. He's a tiefling. He is 24 years old. His alignment is neutral good. He is a transgender man, and he is gay, and he's also deaf, like about 100% deaf in both ears, and his class is Bard. So a little about his backstory. He grew up in a tiefling commune, which is something that we've sort of established for this particular world. So the commune is basically just very community living. Everyone kind of has their part. They're vaguely nomadic. Very rural sort of stuff. Not commune in like a culty way, just a close-knit community that all lives amongst each other. There's probably usually around 130 so people, though people do come and go at points. So anyways, his dad was a part of this commune, and eventually just decided to be an adventurer. He was an adventuring bard, and he met Sonata's mom, who was a tavern singer. He just met her in a town, basically. People weren't very nice to her, so he just decided to bring her back to the commune, and, you know, one thing leads to another. They get married. They have little Sonata. So his parents taught him music from a very young age, and he was always very interested in it. He was kind of a bit of a prodigy for his age. He could play lots of instruments for the time he was very young. He could write music from the time he was very young. So yeah, he was looking to have a very promising career as a bard. So when he was about 8 years old, his commune was attacked during a festival, kind of like raided, by a bunch of humans who didn't like tieflings very much. His dad, being like an adventurer and whatever, was on like the front lines, trying to defend the commune. A bunch of people were running, trying to hide, trying to be safe, basically. Sonata's mom was one of these. She picked him up and ran as fast as she could, trying to get him to safety, but she was followed, and some magic went off, like, right behind her while she was, like, carrying Sonata, and the blast just, you know, killed her. And because of the blast and the force of it, and how loud it was, it actually, like, ruptured Sonata's, like, inner ear, and he lost his hearing. So, after that, he had to kind of be raised by, like, the commune elder. She's just this older tiefling lady. She was very nice to him. She's also very well-traveled and experienced, so she is the one who actually taught him sign language, and that's how he communicates, either by sign language or by, like, writing with, like, chalk and a slate, or writing on paper, whatever. And even though he went deaf, he does still play music, because it's something that makes him happy. Even though he can't hear it anymore, he knows how to do things through, like, muscle memory and feeling the vibrations and just, you know, pure technical skill. So yeah, he still does his barding thing, and eventually he decides, you know, I want to make a name for myself. I want to do something with this. So he leaves the commune to go to the big city to try to find work as a bard, try to make a name for himself. Because he didn't feel like he had much future in the commune. He felt very alienated due to his disability. It was just hard for him, so he thought, you know, I'm just gonna go do something for myself. And he goes to the big city. He goes to Waterdeep in particular, which, if you know D&D, you'll probably know Waterdeep. And he tries to get work in the Musicians Guild, tries to apply to join the Musicians Guild, but they don't accept him. They're a little bit stuck up. So instead of being with the guild, he decides to just kind of freelance, I suppose. So he just goes around to different taverns trying to see who will take him in, let him work, stuff like that. Alot turn him down until he finally goes to the Yawning Portal, which if you know D&D, you will know the Yawning Portal. and he finds work there, just playing music and working for tips, basically. And that is also where his adventure starts, is while he's working at the Yawning Portal. So yes, another tavern. So some basic information about him, or fun facts, whatever. He really likes sweets and pastries, so like things like fruit tarts and sweetbreads, stuff like that. So even though he is deaf, and all deaf people can talk, it's not like he's mute, and he wasn't born deaf, so he can talk pretty well, just he tends not to, because he's been told in the past that it sounds weird. But yeah, he can talk, he just chooses not to. Let's see. He's a big pacifist. He really doesn't like violence or fighting or anything like that. So during combat, stuff like that, he tries not to do as much fighting and does more like buff spell sort of things, buff and debuff things with a little bit of healing in there too. He has anxiety, definitely. He's, if you have anxiety, and his favorite spell is Mage Hand, and that just means that's the spell I tend to use the most when I play him. But yeah, he's a good boy. I know there hasn't really been... I've had a couple speed paints of him here on YouTube, but I've drawn him a lot more on, like, my Instagram and stuff like that. He wears little bells on his tail to, like, get people's attention, since he doesn't like to talk. So if he needs someone's attention or someone to look at something or whatever, he'll just, like, shake his little bells. So, you can always hear him coming, because he shakes his bells all the time. He's also incredibly loud. He doesn't know how much noise he's making all the time, so he tends to slam doors and slam cupboards and drop things and, just generally make a lot of noise. But he is very nice. He is a very good boy. Anyways, moving on from there, let's have a little bit of an ad break, shall we? So, before we move on, I want to tell you guys about ExpressVPN. So, a VPN is a virtual private network. Creates a secure connection between your device and the internet. So, if you're using, like, public Wi-Fi, stuff like that. Because without a VPN, your data is just kind of out there. And if hackers want to get it, they're going to get it. So, it just kind of hides your data from that sort of stuff. Makes it so no one can look at all your private stuff going on. So if you, do online banking or even log into your accounts on public Wi-Fi, it'll just protect it from that. But besides that, it can be used for other things, which is pretty cool, which is what I use it for since I don't go anywhere. So it's really good for streaming services as well, which you guys might be interested in. So if you ever try to click on something and it says, like, not available in your country, with ExpressVPN, you can just change your country, and then, boom, you got it. I know this works on stuff like Spotify, Netflix, YouTube. Basically, any streaming service will have different things depending on where you are, which is really cool. If you're bored and want to watch something that isn't on American Netflix, you can just switch over to, like, Canadian Netflix, or, UK Netflix or Australia Netflix and watch it there. Or just, like I said, a lot of stuff is, like, copyrighted and you can't view it, like, in the US, so switch to a different country. There you go. Easy. ExpressVPN. But yeah, it does protect your information from people that would want to steal it. You can, like, hide your IP address, things like that. Because stuff will try to, like, harvest your data, sell it to other people. That's also a thing. So if you don't want any of that to happen, you can go ahead and download ExpressVPN. I'll have a link in my description below if you're interested in checking it out, if you're interested in internet privacy. With my link, you can find out how to get 3 months free on ExpressVPN, which is pretty cool. And also, if you sign up for ExpressVPN, that also really helps out my channel. And I can put out more videos more often, hopefully. We'll see. Anyways, I'd also like to take a moment to tell you guys about my Patreon. I do have a Patreon. I've had it for a long time. I don't know how many people were aware. But yeah, if you want to support me, as well, want to support me again, you can check out my Patreon, which will also be linked in the description below. Besides that, I also do have like a Redbubble, stuff like that, where you can buy merch from me, but Patreon, it's great. Love it. You guys should check it out. And my other social media is also in the description below. But yeah, anyways, thanks again to ExpressVPN. You guys should definitely check them out. Check out my link, and I guess we'll return to the video. Next in line, we have Dionys. So he has a very long full name. His full name is Dionys Malthenian Karel Ithaloth. It's Elvish, because he's an elf. He is a high elf, specifically. He is 173 years old, which kind of equates in, like, you know, like a human equivalent to being around 21-ish, like early 20s. He is actually lawful evil. He is bisexual. He is a life cleric. And he is the character I'm playing in a Curse of Strahd campaign. So, very fun. So, his basic little backstory. He's a prince. He was born in Evermeet, which is like the land of the elves, basically. He was born with like an unusual birthmark of his chest, on his chest, which is actually the like symbol, like the insignia of Corellon, who is like basically the biggest elf deity. His parents at the time thought maybe it's just like a blessing from the gods, something like that. But they like took him to like the Temple of Corellon, stuff like that, and he started to have visions and started experiencing what is called reverie. It's an elf thing. He started experiencing it like way younger than like any other elf would normally get it, which is at around 100-ish. He was getting it like real young. So kind of putting pieces together, it's thought that he's actually like the chosen of Corellon. You know, the one that Corellon chose to be like, I like you. I'm gonna be your guy, whatever. So yeah, Dionys gets real snobby about it, gets real stuck up, you know, gets a real ego, because he's like, wow, me, I'm God. So yeah, he studies religion and magic, goes to like cleric school, studies in a church, all that sort of stuff. He's really fascinated with death and healing magic. And when he was younger, growing up, he often would do not so great things in order to practice his healing magic. Usually not so great things on small little animals. Because he just wants to see if he can heal it, and sometimes he couldn't. He really wants to be heir to the throne of Evermeet, which is currently unoccupied after the former queen's death. So it's kind of being run by an elven council. I forget how many members there are, but his mother is on the elven council. So there's still a few successors in line from the former queen, but most of them are, like, missing. Like, no one really knows where they are. They left Evermeet, stuff like that. So Dionys takes it upon himself to do little scouting adventures, to go try and find them and bring them back. But oh no, unfortunately, all of them are very conveniently dead. Who knows how that could have happened? So he takes it upon himself to get rid of the competition. So eventually, when he's around 140-ish, his parents have another kid. So he has a younger sibling, and that makes him very bad. And bad? Very mad. Sorry. Makes him very mad, because his younger sibling is just a lot more agreeable in nature and, a lot nicer and more pleasant to be around. And his younger sibling also looks a lot more like Coralon, which doesn't rub him the right way. So yeah, he still really, really tries to do things that would put him more in line for the throne, do things that will gain him favor with Coralon, which in turn should gain him favor with all the elves, right? So he does things like hunt down orcs, hunt down drow, stuff like that. He'll go out on whole, hunting excursions to wipe out orc villages, even though orcs are literally just people. So that's not great. Yeah, he does that in order to try to make himself seem better. But yeah, he really wants to take over Evermeet. He wants to be king real bad. But what he doesn't know is that even his mom doesn't think that he'd be a very good heir to the throne, doesn't think he'd be a very good king, because he is very volatile, and it's not great. Elves tend to have very subdued emotions, and Dionys is anything but subdued. I kind of based him off of a combination of a couple characters, kind of based on Joffrey from Game of Thrones and Ramsay Bolton from Game of Thrones, Dennis from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So if you know any of these characters, you'll know what a treat Dionys is. So a couple little fun facts about him. Yeah, he's super stuck up. He also does scarification on himself, because he wants to be prettier, because in this lore that we have, moon elves, sun elves, and wood elves all have markings, whether they're tattoos or naturally occurring. They all have markings on their skin, and high elves do not. And he's very jealous that they get to have pretty markings and he doesn't, so he does it to himself. He won't eat or drink anything unless he's seen it prepared before him, or absolutely trusts the source, so a royal cook or whatever. Otherwise, he needs to spend 10 minutes before every meal praying and doing purify food and drink on it, or else he will not eat it or drink it. So he's actually betrothed to an elven princess from some different place, and she hates him a lot and really doesn't want to marry him, but it's one of those arranged marriage deals. He also could not care about her, so one of those things. When he was younger, he actually had a bit of a love affair with a stable boy, that ended pretty badly. Ended in the stable boy dying, being executed, so that's not great. But it was after that Dionys kind of snapped and went a little off the walls. So yeah, that's fun. He's in a Curse of Strahd campaign, like I said, and thus far he's been bit by vampires twice, so that's I'm on the edge of my seat. So yeah, that's about it for him, so let's go on to the next one. So last up we have Amigo. He's from a different campaign, a very different campaign. It's more I guess you could say a sci-fi Men in Black sort of thing. It's this thing with a bunch of different alternate universes and stuff like that. So Amigo, his full name, surprisingly, Amigo is not his real name. His full name is Joaquin Flores. Amigo is just his alias, and he's been going by it for years. So he's human, and he is from Earth, regular Earth. Not regular Earth, but he's from Earth. So he is half Mexican. He's a quarter Apache and a quarter Caucasian. He's 28 years old. His alignment is chaotic neutral. He's pansexual. His class is fighter, but with like the gunslinger, like a homebrew gunslinger archetype. And a brief backstory about him. So the world he's from is sort of like a diesel punk-esque world. I guess you could kind of think a little like Tank Girl, a little Mad Max sort of thing. But also mix that with like Wild West, like Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So it's like Wild West era. So the year is like around mid-1800s to early 1900s. It's vague. It's not really specified. So he was born in New Mexico, and he lived with his parents on a farm. And he has an older brother and a younger sister. They grow crops, raise animals. His mother and sister like make baskets and blankets, that sort of stuff. So, you know, they get by. They're not rich, but they're not like incredibly poor. Things are fine. So eventually a big dust storm hits. It wipes out like all the crops, bunch of animals. It makes the soil like really infertile to like grow more things on, and the family starts really falling into poverty. His sister already had pretty poor health, and with all this happening and all like the dust and bad atmosphere, all that, his sister's health starts to get worse, which is even more of a like financial strain on the family. So his brother, who's an older brother, he leaves to go to find a job in the city to be able to, you know, give money to his family. And so he leaves to go to the big city, and he never returns and completely loses contact with the family. Have no idea what happened to him. He's gone. So now it's time for Amigo to step up and, you know, try to help things. So he takes like odd jobs in like one of the nearby towns, you know, just doing manual labor sort of stuff, doing whatever anyone needs him to do. But eventually he does fall in with a bad crowd, starts doing like petty theft, stuff like that, and eventually ends up joining a gang and starts doing even more illegal things like smuggling, robbery, you know, all sorts of cowboy stuff, you know, movies. So it does bring in money, though, so his family suspiciously starts having more money, and they wonder where it came from. So Amigo is really ashamed of himself, really hates that he fell into that, and doesn't think that his family would accept the money if they knew it was dirty money. So he just doesn't feel like he can face them, so he also leaves. He leaves them with all the money that he has, and he just sort of disappears, goes off on his own, goes off with, like, his gang, and then eventually goes solo, and just sort of becomes an outlaw, pretty well-known outlaw in the, you know, Great American West. It does all the typical cowboy stuff, like, if you've seen any cowboy movie. So there's definitely bounties on his head. He does send anonymous money, like, back to his family all the time, in, like, letters, stuff like that. He doesn't know how they're using it. He just hopes that they're good. Hopes that his family is doing okay. Thinks about them a lot. And it's during one of these jobs that he gets sucked into the adventure. Almost quite literally. He had, like, a job, had to, like, steal this, basically MacGuffin. And when he actually, like, touched the MacGuffin, it transported him to this, like, alternate dimension, basically. And that's where the, his adventure starts. So, fun little facts about him. He speaks fluent Spanish as well as, like, English or Common. But there are, like, translation devices in this, like, organization he's in. Whatever. He's also incredibly superstitious. He's very scared of, you know, generic superstition type things. Walking under ladders, stepping on cracks, a black cat crossing your path, that sort of stuff. He very much believes in them. So yeah, he's pretty sleazy. Pretty sleazy man. a bit of a home wrecker, has been caught many a times with his pants around his ankles, whether it be caught by a wife, caught by a husband, you know? Not great. So he's had to leave lots of towns real fast. And just being with the time and the place, he's also a bit of an alcoholic. It's not great. He really needs to drink less. But, you know. He does know how to line dance, which is pretty cool. Cool for him. He's also very, like, soft with children. His sister is, I think, like 4 years younger than him. So a lot of, like, kids will remind him of his sister when she was little. And he was very close with his sister. So, you know, kids, very soft. He wants to protect them, very big brotherly towards them. Also, just within the campaign thus far, he has lost a tooth. He is missing his right canine tooth due to some stuff that has happened with the storyline so far. So, right now, currently, in the campaign, he does not have a tooth there, but he will be getting a gold tooth, which is why I drew it. But yeah, I think that's about it for him as well, and I think that wraps up all of them. So yeah, those are all my D&D characters. I love them all. They're all pretty different from each other, which I think is pretty neat. Very fun, very cool, very funky fresh. Yeah, I personally love D&D. It's very fun. I think I've been playing now for 3 years, possibly. 3 or 4 years. I'm not entirely sure anymore. In my first campaign, like real campaign that I've done, is the one with Morrow, and that is still running even after, I think we started it, I guess it was like 3 years. I think we started it in 2018. So that's still going. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. So I definitely recommend it if you guys can find people to play with. Very cool. So yeah, that's about it from me. So definitely check out all the links in the description. Link to my online store, link to my Patreon, link to all my other social medias will be down there. And you guys should definitely check it out. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.